Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am Tamara Johnson Shealy. Good morning. It is Saturday. It is the 20th of June. I cannot believe how quickly this year is passing us by. Let me see where my trusty co-host is this morning so we can get this party started. Let's see where he is. David.
Hi.
Morning, we are LIVE. You sitting on the floor? Are you sitting on the can you adjust your camera? You're sitting too low.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I just was looking something up. Hi.
Yeah. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Adjust it a little more, David. We're live. Where are you going? You don't have to put your t-shirt on, your jacket on today, David. Because I got on my t-shirt, David. I got on my t-shirt and I know you will have yours soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Lots happening in the ATL, David. Last week, I was in Lowndes County, came back from Lowndes County, and Atlanta was on fire.
Yeah.
Not believe what had happened with the death of Rayshard Brooks.
I don't know how to fix this, but I can't see you. I mean, there's a screen, but there's.
Can you hear me? Just keep talking, David.
Yeah, but I got to see you, Tamara.
No, I got to see you too, David. But let's just keep talking. Everybody sees both of us.
Screen. Let's see.
Yeah. So Rayshard Brooks, David, what's your thoughts? My heart was broken. 75 was blocked. Wendy's was on fire. The city was enraged. I came back to something that, my heart is just continuing to break. Being the mother of two black sons, two black women, that every time they leave the house, David, I pray because I don't want to be scared. So I pray, and I've taught my children how to address law enforcement. Yes, sir, them to death. Yes, ma'am, her to death. Just yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Because I need my children to come home.
Yeah.
I'm waiting on Robby to join us this morning, but I see a couple of her guests are in the lobby. I see Evette Avery. Let me see. I think there's Robby. There's Robby. Let's see where she is. Good morning, Robby.
Good morning. Sorry, I had some internet issues.
Yeah, you know what? This internet has been tricky.
It's the riots, the protests. We've had helicopters for the last week and a half, like chronic helicopters. And that's a very expensive helicopter, City of Atlanta helicopter. The Wendy's incident was less than a half a mile up the block. So,
Robby, I came back home to this. I was in Lowndes County protesting and drove into this. It's like not literally, but just coming back into the city from, this is, I have no words. I just know we have to, we need radical reform. And we're asking, we're demanding.
From what I've been reading, activists that I really respect, shout out to Eva Dickerson. She's a AAUC graduate working with Black farmers right now locally. She's been in the trenches for years, and this needed to happen. Wendy's is a corporation with insurance. They pay low wages. They came here for gentrification because the money was here. There's nothing to feel bad about this. There was a man gunned down by our tax-funded law enforcement who were supposed to keep people safe, and after he was shot in the back twice, he was kicked. Like, not a large foot kick. People stood over him, stood on top of him. Law enforcement, people who are supposed to protect the public, who take oath. And personally, I'm grateful. Obviously, I'm saddened at the loss, like everyone, but I'm grateful that the climate has changed. We went from our mayor shaming protesters, activists, saying go home. We're better than this. To I didn't know. I hear you. We're going to change. We're going to hold police accountable who come as a SWAT team on people in cars tase them multiple times. We're going to hold police accountable who put the public at risk. If you really think about it, Wendy's is a commercial business. They have commercial video. These officers either like did this on camera. They knew that the business was going to have video. So what was going to happen? Was that video going to get lost? I don't know if because that's what usually happens. We've seen that before over and over. And the people in the streets, you know, rightfully so, did what they needed to do. And it worked, actually. It seems to be working. Because our mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, is not telling people, go home, you're better than this. She's actually started to walk in the street with the protesters, as she should.
Mm-hmm. She better listen. They all better listen. I think all politicians, elected officials, you know, candidates, everybody needs to just be quiet and listen.
Hey, David.
I mean it, though. I mean it. They, you know, you hear them. They always have. They're talking. They make these promises. We need to be quiet and we need to listen.
Well, you know, I hope they do listen, but I hope they do it like we are, cost effective and safe virtually. Like this whole traveling on our tax dollars, virtual, you know, or traveling on plane tickets to LA, getting more budgets, getting more funding. Just do your stuff virtually. Like we're in a crisis. We're in an emergency. The whole term public servant, I don't know where that's gone. Like these people are living the life on our tax dollars while the funding never seems to get to the people that need it. And that brings in, I hope Kamal's going to be here with Community Movement Builders right here in Pittsburgh, because this happened in their backyard. And the question arises, like, whose community is it? And that's the whole thing with Wendy's. Like, who owns this one? Wendy, you know, are we really feeling bad for a corporation that doesn't even pay a living wage? Or, you know, and that's kind of what I'm hoping Kamal will discuss. You know, Kamal's an attorney. He started his own, you know, a nonprofit right here. Okay, he's here. He's here. Is he here? Is he coming? Cool.
Kamal is here. We have Monica here, and we have Evette here. Who do you want us to bring in first?
Is it possible to bring them all? So let me just, I can introduce to me. So I'm really excited. Kamal's with Community Movement Builders in Pittsburgh. Hey. And then, hey, Monica. Monica's with SisterSong in West End, Reproductive Justice. And Evette's here too. Okay, Evette's our own, Atlanta's own labor activist, whistleblower with this airport opening back up. So y'all are all beloved. So please, whoever wants to go first, I'm very excited you're all here. Thank you, Tamara, for letting me.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe you want to come out, introduce a bit about Community Movement Builders, and then maybe Monica, SisterSong, and Evette's actually coming back, as is Kamal. But we would love all of your perspectives on the recent happenings and on everything, really.
Sure. Quickly, so Community Movement Builders is a grassroots organization. Actually, we're national at this stage. We have chapters in Detroit, Dallas, San Diego, New Orleans, and here in Atlanta being our home base. We do grassroots organizing around the issue of gentrification in Southwest Atlanta, in Pittsburgh. And we also do what we call sustainable development, which is developing cooperative economic enterprises to help support sort of larger, at some point, to help to support a larger framework of cooperative businesses, which can substitute out the capitalist businesses, which currently run our communities, this country, and actually run our politicians. And so briefly, I just want to co-sign everything that I heard you say, Robby. I think what protesters have been doing over the last month or so is both historic and needed. At the time of saying that we're going to do peaceful protests, we're going to arrive at a certain time, take the route that we're designated to take, and then leave at a certain time, that has gotten us nowhere in terms of this battle around police violence and police brutality in our community. And that the moment that the protesters start actually deciding that they have a right to destroy public property and exact a payment for the loss of Black people being killed, is the moment that these politicians in some form start reacting. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that these elected officials are going to be down for the liberation of Black folks in this country. I think what they're going to do is propose things that they think will get us off the streets, And it's up to the folks on the streets to continue to push things to make sure that this is not all that there is. People are waiting for sort of a time period of containment, of like, this is going to die down. We make a few speeches, we give a few things in, and then things will go back to normal. And it's hard to sustain street protests for a very long time, but that mixed with other radical endeavors, I think it's what's needed to make some change in what needs to happen in this country.
Kamal, I was actually downtown yesterday, and they were still there. They were at the Capitol. They were on Auburn. They were still there, and I was like, yes, I saw a lot of people still out there in the streets.
Yeah, and it has to happen to make people like Keisha Lance Bottoms, Joyce Shepard, other folks understand that they can't be on the side of the cops, right? And let's not fool ourselves. These folks they elected off of the black vote, but their loyalty, their allegiance is to white capital, right? That's what their allegiance is to. That's what they think they're here to protect, is business owners, corporations, the local economy, their own private careers, right? We are but a stepping stone for them to move further. And so pushing these elected officials, no matter who they are, is the right thing. But we cannot be fooled into thinking that these folks will do something that's good for us just because it's good for us. They have to be forced to do things that are in our benefit. And then they have to be thrown out anyway, because they're never going to stand up for the liberation of black folks. And again, as Robby stated, Keisha Lance Bottoms, no more than a week and a half ago, was telling folks to get off the street and to go vote, as if that's the only way to make change. And in my opinion, even if that's not even like the most vital way to make change. But that's what she's calling for. And that's what she was hoping to push as a message, and it blew up in her face. And now her, along with other folks who came out on that side, are now looking in some ways to get in front of this. Now, I'm not thinking that they're trying to get on the right side of history, but they're trying to get in front of this so they can contain and control these measures, contain people's anger. And again, it's up to folks, not only in the street, but the organizers, the activists, the revolutionaries, to start to figure out ways to work closer together so that we can say what we want these outcomes to come to be. And lastly, I'm going to say, I think Seattle is a good measurement of what's happening in terms of people creating autonomous zones. I think we need a liberated zone, like something that's more within the Black history of protest. We usually call these things liberated zones, but we need to create spaces that we control the institutions. We control what comes in our community, what goes out of our community. And if these cops want to go on strike, let them go on strike. We need to figure out ways that while they're out, how do we replace them? And one of the measurements that we're going to do actually as an organization is that we're going to start in a couple of weeks doing patrols in our neighborhood to take the place of the police, because we think that's needed to help protect our folks from the police and help keep our people safe.
Love it. Love it.
If I could chime in with, and I co-sign everything Kamal just said to the T. One thing I want to say, because I see this repetitive over and over, and I have actually, this is going to sound real weird, but I have an affection for Keisha Lance Bottoms, because I have to respect any woman of color who gets to the position that she's gotten to. But I was really, really concerned and dismayed when it was something tricky to me, like coming at people emotion-wise. You're better than this. You're not going to outcare me. I'm a mom. Like, I think she was appealing to people's emotions on one hand, but when you do that and you have that level of influence, bringing in people that our community would look up to, like T.I. and Killer Mike, and having that man stand up and defend those, defend the cops who were clearly in the wrong, just to calm people down, that's not cool. Don't do that with people's emotions. Don't use your influence like that. Don't use your platform like that. Don't use the love and trust that people have for you for them to malign themselves.
Well, I guess quickly, that's why I would consider it the opposite of the most disrespectful way to use your platform. And I don't care whether or not it's a Black woman or a Black man. I don't care what your gender is, what your sexuality is. If you're wrong on the issue, you're wrong on the issue, right? And so in these particular issues, if these folks are aligned with capital, right, as opposed to the people in the community, then I think these people are wrong and they need to be called out. Killer Mike, T.I., all these folks who came out there and told our folks to get off the streets, again, because they're looking to protect their capital, right, their private interest. And in terms of Keisha Lance Bottoms, she's looking to control her ability to hopefully be, in her estimation, the vice president or some other administrative platform. So it really doesn't matter that we've had other mayors, both male and female, Black mayors in Atlanta who have done this same thing, which is why we've reached this point in Atlanta anyway. These Black politicians have sided with white capital, have caused a gentrification of what folks like to believe is the Black Mecca, right? They've caused the Black population to lessen year after year, decade after decade under their leadership. They've kicked out poor people. They've paid poor people to leave. They've destroyed housing for poor folks. And that's not in the interest of Black people. That is only in the interest of white capital. That's only in the interest of creating middle-class enclaves and catering to those folks and us being cheap labor.
And those are facts. I mean, I can't argue with that. Those are facts. But I will say that even among differences, as long as you are not stepping on my neck, which I hear you come out, there, I would hope that as we build these alliances, we reach these people if they're reachable, whether it's through protests or not. But to some degree, we have to have a certain level of common decency to get somewhere. But I'm completely with you, because you can't argue with the facts you just said. And Monica, while you're here, Monica's go ahead. My introduction. Go ahead.
No, first of all, I just want to give so much love to everybody that's on this podcast today. This is amazing. The conversation is already fire and dope, and we're getting in, and I really appreciate the perspectives that we're already stepping into. But peace and greetings, everyone. My name is Monica Ray Simpson. I'm the executive director of SisterSong. We are the National Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. We were founded as a movement in 1994 by 12 Black women who, when thinking about how the conversation of reproductive health and rights was going in this country, that was very much focused on the right to abortion access, the right to contraceptives, and was really being led by a very white mainstream narrative. They knew that for them and their communities that the conversation was bigger and broader and more intersectional, dare I say. And so they created this movement to actually not just talk about the right to not have children and to be able to prevent or end pregnancies with dignity and without shame, but they were very much concerned about the right to be able to have the children that we want in the ways that we want, and to honor the traditions of our community, from the Black grand midwives and beyond and across cultures, to be able to have that as a true source of our power in our communities, and to also talk very intentionally about the human right to have our children in healthy and safe environments, which is absolutely being violated and has been violated for centuries in this country. But we're seeing that even more today as this issue of police violence, state-sanctioned violence, all of that is really hitting our communities in such detrimental ways. And ultimately, this work that I do every single day is about the human right to self-determine and the human right to bodily autonomy, for us to be able to have control of our own bodies, and for that not to be taken over by the state or any other violent means in this country. And so this issue for us is hitting home, right? And I think that when we hear about someone else being killed on the street or in the Wendy's parking lot, we sometimes, we see the family get on the screen and we hear them say the same things to us, let's hold their memory up, and we do that and we give them love and we hold them, but then we're not thinking about the impact that this is having on their families. The fact that Rayshard had 3 children, right? The fact that George Floyd's daughter is seeing her father on the cover of New York Magazine, and because he's no longer with us, right? The fact that Breonna Taylor, who was taken from us in Louisville, we don't even know what she had the ability to do with her womb to create family or to even live into her destinies and dreams. And so that is the work that we focus on every single day. And I think it's an important narrative to make sure that we're not losing in this conversation right now, because yes, it is very much about how do we defund police? How do we invest in our communities? How do we have an abolition conversation in this country? But we can't have those conversations void of understanding that patriarchy is still real, sexism is still real. And if we don't address this in a holistic way, then we will just potentially recreate the same systems that are holding us down as a community as a whole.
Thank you.
She is fire. She is fire.
So, my God.
Both of your organizations have upcoming events, which we definitely want you to share. And then, of course, we have Evette kindly, patiently waiting. So Evette has an amazing story. I'm going to do a brief for her, and then we would love to hear from her. So Evette was employed at the world's busiest airport with one of the largest employers in Georgia, something like DL, something like that. So she basically was trying to organize, because the structure at this corporation headquartered in Georgia, which is a right to work state, meaning right to fire, meaning you can get fired for any reason, recourse is afterwards in the courts. And she was, working, doing her thing, 7 years, good record. And when she started to organize at this company, she was retaliated against, targeted, and ultimately terminated. And she decided to take the L for everybody. And she has been waiting to speak with Atlanta elected officials, the transportation committee. Obviously, our airport has ridiculous traffic. Andre Dickens, our Atlanta City Council at large, our mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, because the structure at this company is set up where some people have protections and some people don't. And when you look at the demographics of who's protected, the CEOs, the VPs, the pilots, and what they predominantly are, male, Caucasian, etc., and who's not protected, below wing employees, the ramp, the baggage workers, the ticket agents, those folks who do not have medical, which was what Evette was trying to get for people, a living wage, protections. Here she is back, still in the fight, still working for labor. I call her Atlanta's own whistleblower. And now we have an interesting situation, because before Evette was, when Evette was trying to get precautions and safety protections for workers, that was before COVID. So we were trying to warn the mayor about the problems at the company. And now it's after COVID, which how were the airplanes being cleaned? That's a $10 an hour job. If you're lucky, should that have been a $10 an hour job? This is where we're at. So Evette, fill us in. And I got to ask you about indemnification language and qualified immunity, because there's a connection with that. But please fill us in. Where are we? Did she freeze?
Yikes, I think.
Well, thank you today.
She's back.
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
And can y'all hear me? And can y'all hear me well?
They're
Okay.
watching.
I had to escape
That's
from
why it
my
froze.
house because I have visitors today. So, okay. Maybe, yeah. But ladies, for bringing on to back, like she's for the airline for almost 7 years, trying to get the protections needed for the weather. And now, like I said, after COVID, it has truly shined a light. And they now really see as workers that it's a stark difference between how they are being treated as non-unionized workers versus the unionized portion of the workforce, which are the pilots. So the offerings to, leave the company or take leave of absences, the pilots, of course, were offered pay, medical, and things of that nature, where everybody else was like, hey, we're going to either cut your hours or you can go home for a year or 6 months or 3 months. And it's a real difference between unionized versus non-unionized. And that's something I will continue to fight until there's nothing left to fight. But the drastic difference between the airline I knew last year before I was fired and the airline now is totally different. And it's pretty eye-opening and a big awakening for all the employees that currently work there.
Evette, I'm going to ask you some questions, because I think sometimes
you said you want to ask me a couple of things.
Please. The reason being is because, and I want to repeat what you just said. Some people got furloughed, meaning they were on pay, meaning they kept their medical, meaning they kept their benefits, meaning they didn't lose retirement, right? And those people are predominantly the pilots because they're unionized, so it's per their contract. And some people were told you can go home for a year. Some people were told you can go home for a year. No pay, no medical, unemployment. And those people are below wing, predominantly people of color, ramp, catering, subcontracted, basically the essential workers that make the airport run because they are not unionized. And those are the people Evette was trying to get protection. So Evette, in a union contract with indemnification language, which is pretty much the same thing as qualified immunity. So everyone has been referring to all the people murdered at the hands of the police. And I have to wonder, are the police right now, Roscoe, are we gonna pay for their legal funds? Because that's usually what happens with qualified immunity. If a politician or a police officer does something on the job, we pay for their legal fight, basically. And come out, you're an attorney, so I would love, and then of course we have Monica who knows all. So Evette, how this pertains to labor in a company where one section of that company is protected and one section represented by a union contract that has indemnification language, meaning if something arises out of work, that worker is then protected by the company. If the bottom rungs, the other people who work there, who keep it running on lower salary, are not protected. Let's say a ramp worker, which this has happened over and over and over, gets run over by an airplane wheel by accident. What happens when that worker's family sues because they died or he lost a leg or he has a permanent injury? Because what I've seen is the company goes into protection mode and pays the legal fees against that employee. And I don't think people realize, people like you, who were not only fighting for protections in general, but for those safety measures, for those people not to have to take that on, which is what you've done now legally in court, right? So who's paying for your legal fees, and who's defending the company? Because this company has an inside legal counsel and an outside legal counsel. So what she's up against is massive. And I want people to understand that in terms of how this is structured against one individual. Sorry, that was a lot. Go ahead.
Right. You have basically the whole world against you. When it comes to this, when it comes to this company, first of all, it's hard to even find an attorney who will even touch your case, especially here in Atlanta, because so many of them are in the pockets of the company. So either they have some kind of connection, whether it's, they represent them or whatever, or have, whatever it is that connection is, they won't even touch it. You mentioned the company name and they're like, oh, no, we can't handle your case. So even for my case, I had to go outside of the state to find an attorney that was willing to fight against this company. And they actually set up just for a lot of, Delta employees to use them because of that fact. Unfortunately, if you get hurt at this company, you will become a target to try to get you out of there. They'll leave you on, disability, short term, then long term, and they'll kind of leave you hanging for the longest. And for example, right now, the people who are out on disability for being hurt, they are not on workman's comp. They're not being offered any of the packages to get out of there. They can't even accept the retirement package. They're not even given options. They're treated like a non-factor and we're called inactive or not active, just so they are not able to, go ahead and cut ties with the company, take the retirement package and go. They're stuck in limbo, still sitting at home, trying to get, rehabilitate or whatever. And they're just kind of leaving them out there. So they have no voice, no recourse, and they feel like they're stuck, and they truly are, because unless you really have the will to fight this huge company, you feel like you're all alone. And a lot of people don't realize, where they stand until they get injured on the job or something like that happens, and they realize that open door policy and this friendly company is really not that at all.
And our news media doesn't help either, because the AJC and Supporter Report, who actually gets funded, by the airline, they kind of paint this beautiful picture, and it's fascinating because the hierarchy at the company is really the pilots, who are predominantly Caucasian. They come out of the Air Force, and then there's the in-flight, and in-flight is the basically all the women and some men who are flight attendants. And originally Delta didn't hire women of color, so a lot of those attendants are Caucasian. And when you look at the structure, the pilots their contract trickles down a bit to the attendants, and those attendants kind of defend, and then you have that bottom wing. And when you look at it that way, the ticket counter, the ramp, the caterers, the cleaners, everyone below wing are Black in Atlanta. And they're the only ones who are not protected. So when things happen to employees at the company, this entire airport it almost should be a doctorate, a thesis, a paper, to see how old systems create this new structure that we have and how people's lives are affected. So I wanted to mention the media, and I wanted to ask you, there's a billboard up right now, Evette, with the company Delta, who donates to the Civil Rights Museum, speaks on minority issues, right here in Midtown, all Black Lives Matter. And here you are, a Black woman terminated for trying to help people. Hey, Egberto actually covered you, so I'm glad he's on here. What do you think of that billboard? And then Egberto, please.
Well, I think it's definitely that new billboard is just a front, because they truly don't believe that Black Lives Matter. If they did, they would have truly, not fought so hard and tried to eliminate as many union-friendly and union activists in the company. Over the time when I was terminated, there was others that have been terminated in other locations, and they all were targeted just because of their union activity. So if they really believe that they're, somebody mattered, especially Black lives, which is the majority of their company, they would, actually have allowed us to do what we're supposed to do legally, our fairly protected right to unionize, and without interference. But that's something that they fought hard against. Like I said, they were firing me, and at the same time donating to keep the MLK Center open for the weekend, which was crazy. You giving them money, but yet and still something that Dr. King fought for and died for. You were directly, going against that, but showing the face of who you are to the public. You're trying to say, hey, this is what we do, but in reality, it's not. And I will let Mr. Egberto come in, because I know he has to come in for a few moments.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see everybody here. Great to see you too. I mean, I'd love to have you on again. Let me tell you, it's interesting that you talk about the billboard and the marketing, etc. We have become, as a country, a corporation, and we do everything. Everything that we do is a matter of controlling people. And the one thing that I want to put out there is that the police force is the enforcer of everything. But what you say about these corporations caring about Black people or caring about people in general, that is a true thing. They care nothing. It's all about the bottom line. We are a capitalist country. A capitalist country, the only thing that matters is capital. And the only way you can control capital is through a method called racism. And the reason racism works is that it goes ahead and it puts people in pecking order. And because of our history, we as Black people, those of us who are Black, we're well placed at the bottom end of the pecking order. And in doing so, that's how they maintain control. Everybody can say, well, at least I am not X. At least I am not X. And it's easier to keep them down. What America saw over the last few months is they developed a certain sense of humanity, because in all the different types of people they saw killed, hurt, and injured, they saw themselves for once, and they saw themselves doing it. So the narrative started not to fit. And that's why you see the corporations all jumping on Black Lives Matter. These are the same guys who actually consider the Black Lives Matter movement a terrorist movement. These are the people who claimed it was a terrorist movement, but they saw the change coming from our younger Gen Xers, our millennials, our Gen Zs. A lot of people don't like when I categorize people by generations or whatever, but young people, the people that started to see, not develop, but not to be catered by the inhumanity of our economic system, actually got involved. And now that we saw, and I hate to put it this way, it took the movement being entirely multicultural, multiracial to actually effect change, because suddenly it will have an effect on their bottom line as it is having right now. And that's it.
No, this is the same situation as Monica. Like, what do you say after that? Like, everything's been said. I do want to ask, so because this is interesting so Egberto has interviewed Evette before, covered her story, and hopefully will again with an update. So now that we're reopening Georgia, the flights are coming back on. They didn't really stop with cargo, but there was a number in the COVID numbers that said non-residents in Georgia. And I've always suspected, because those were employees headquartered by the airline, that those were infected numbers. And it was a large number. It was in the thousands. And there's, articles saying that there's a layered mitigation of how employees haven't gotten COVID, which I want to know, Evette, on the front lines, what have you actually heard? Because we're not going to get it out of traditional media. We'll get it out of independent media like Egberto. But where are we? What's your opinion on that in terms of safety and what you've been hearing?
Yeah, I saw some numbers that were released, which I think were totally false about how many of the Delta employees have been exposed to the coronavirus, with the testing not being up to par anywhere. In reality, we don't know the true numbers of who has been affected and who has not been, but I'm sure more people were exposed because of the late things put in place in order to try to protect workers. So I'm sure those numbers are very skewed. A lot more than 500 people I'm sure have been affected out of 90,000, because being a frontline worker, we were there. Not only this job, I'm still a frontline worker at my current employer, so you're always in the front line and always exposed to coronavirus. So when the measures weren't taking place early on, people were getting exposed. And then people were trying to hide the fact, the companies were not, releasing. I know they can't release names, but at least release, we have cases here. You need to do this, you need to do that. That's not being done because they're too busy trying to protect their bottom line and keep people coming to work or doing whatever they want them to do out of fear, versus being informed so you can make informed decisions to better protect yourself. So I definitely don't believe those numbers that have been put out.
So, and I guess I want people to make the connection to, not only are you personally exposed, and what does that mean, right? As an essential worker, what is that worth in terms of wage? That's why you need medical, you can't just work without medical in case. However, when you come home, the way that this virus works, and you go to the supermarket, which is exactly how it spread, right? Now you're impacting public health. And this is the issue that I really want people to understand.
Right.
An airline operates globally. So not only is public health affected, but security-wise, what happens to our essential workers, our frontline employees, when they don't have protections and they cannot report safety issues for fear of losing their job? A blanket, we don't retaliate policy that's just on paper doesn't mean anything if you actually retaliate. So how, and I'm glad we're talking about alliances. I'm glad we're talking about the airport and independent media and really propaganda media. So kind of what now? And this is why the judges are so important, because when these courts, whether it's for qualified immunity for officers, when these legal cases go to the courts, it's the judges who are appointed who make these decisions, who keep everything stagnant. And this is the same for labor. It's the same for qualified immunity for the police. It's all contractual. So I guess I would love to hear everybody.
I have one thing that I'd love to say before I go, and that is, I love that you brought up the issue about the way the virus is transmitted, etc. Because what's occurring in Tulsa today with Donald Trump and the thousands of people, he made them all sign a legal document stating that if they get infected, they won't sue the campaign. But there's something deeper that nobody's talking about that issue. What this is a very, very calculated experiment on how the virus spreads. In other words, this is not a conspiracy theory. That's not where I'm going at all. I'm saying Donald Trump has this theory and is held along with a lot of folks on the right that this is just the flu. And what they want to show America is that they put a whole lot of people in a big confined space, and then the data isn't going to look all that bad when this stuff is over. Therefore, we can go back to work. Send Evette and her team out there to put themselves at risk, because remember, the death rate is only about 1%. That's huge, actually, but that is how it's going to be sold. And if you lose 1% of your workforce, so what? You don't care about the dead people, right? You only care about those people that are functioning. Most people are going to recover. But guess what's starting to come out? even those people that are asymptomatic right now, they have, for those that were tested, they have lung damage, and they're going to have other healthcare issues later on in life caused by our irresponsibility right now. So I think one of the things, and I thank you guys for doing all of that and exposing that, is to let people know that it's just like we can't see the virus, we can't see all the damage that this virus is doing. The corporations know it. The ones who have their scientists telling them these things, and they're not making us aware of it. And in that process, we become exactly what capitalism expects us to be, and that is just a whole bunch of cogs and commodities for a few to profit. And con eso, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Alberto. Tamara wanted me to think thank you. And on his point, who is this 1%? Who is affected most? We all know who's being affected most, because who has the least resources to protect ourselves? So I actually, ironically, Evette, there was recently a post, an article about a flight attendant who was into union, a Delta flight attendant, who made some commentary. I believe you have seen it. And she has since left some very, very charged, problematic commentary. She is a huge anti-union person, and she's left the company, I'm assuming, with her entire package, because they would never do that to one of their own. But ironically, there's someone on my live feed. I want to read Kathy Davis Hall commentary here. Kathy is of a lighter persuasion hue, saying, I worked for Delta for 32 years. I experienced mergers, Western, Pan Am, and Northwest, all which went under due to their greedy unions. I want to say that Kathy is a prime example of someone who is keeping non-unified workers from their protections. This is the same type of person who was online making those comments. Evette, what do you think about this type of person who is in their bubble, living comfortably happy, watching half the workforce that are people of color not have a living wage, not have medical, not have protections, rampers losing their legs, hurting their backs off of overweight baggage, their families having to sue alone against $1 billion corporation while executives get bonuses, go bankrupt multiple times while we taxpayers bail them out. But this is Kathy's position because Kathy is comfortable. What do you think about Kathy?
Right. I think Kathy is one of those people, like too many, who until something directly happens to her, then, the company is the greatest. Everything is fine and well, but you have to always look at your fellow employees, fellow co-workers, because me as a ready reserve, we had to work only a minimum amount of hours. We couldn't work so many hours, no insurance, no health care. And you think that's fine, and I'm doing the exact same job that you're doing, which is crazy to me. Everybody deserves medical and dental and vision. Everybody deserves to be able to retire and go home. Everybody deserves those same things. And just because you have it does not mean that you are better, and that, we should not look out for everybody else in that workforce. And it's a shame that we have people that still have that mindset, but the company loves those type of people because they're usually the anti-union people, and they use them in order to keep their agenda going, and that's what they do for them. But as soon as Miss Kathy messes up one time and ends up on the street or gets injured and think that company loves her so well, and all of a sudden she's on workman's comp, and then you don't hear from them, and you push further out the door, that mindset will change. Sometimes it takes people to actually get directly affected, unfortunately, for things to change. And that's why I'm so glad this movement is going on now, because now people see a little bit more that you can get touched. And her opinion may change the way she's treated right now with the company here pretty soon. July is coming soon, so she'll see August 1st how it looks.
Right. Can I say something really quick, Robby and team? I just feel like Kathy, what she represents, we can see how what she represents shows up across like all the different ways that we do our work, right? So yes, we see her in this very real-time example, with what's happening, at the airport, what's happening with Delta and workers. We see her in our movement as we do reproductive health and rights work in this country, where the white women who are like, we got what we need to be able to have all the health care that we need. We're cool. We don't need to like push to make sure that, you know, certain amendments that are making it harder for communities of color, like the Hyde Amendment, to be able to access services and things like that. We don't have to push so much for that. We're good. We can see them. They're also called Karens, right? You know, as we're thinking about police brutality and what that, we just see this representation of folks who have become complicit, right? And have like allowed themselves to get locked into this fantasy because of their privilege, because of white privilege, because of class, because of all the different things connected to capitalism that keeps people in these bubbles that we're talking about. And I think that these people are extremely problematic. And I think you're right, sis, like until something happens to them. So really quickly, I want to give this story because I've been using this example in a lot of the different conversations that I have around like patriarchy and sexism and how all these other things are connected to this. And it's not just about what race and white supremacy, right? There's so much more encompassed in this conversation. But I'm not sure if you all remember the show Underground. Any of you all watched the show Underground when it was on? Okay, well, there was a scene in Underground where there was a slave there who was learning to read, and the white slave master's wife was helping him learn. The white slave master found out that she was helping him learn, right? And so what happened was she gets called out to the field one day, and the white slave master has the slave hanging from the tree about to hang him, right? And he's asking her, were you helping him do this? And she's like, yes, I was. And so he's about to hang the slave. She takes the gun from her slave master husband and shoots the slave. Don't shoot her husband. She shoots the slave because she didn't want the slave to suffer. And so then what happened to her was the slave master ended up killing her. And so it's a very grim example of what it looks like, because I think that there are so many folks who are so scared to go against these systems because they're not designed for any of us to win. They're not designed for any of us to survive, right? It's only designed for a certain type of person, white man, right, to be able to survive and thrive in this country. And so I think when we see this Kathy perspective in this instance, when we see the Karens, it's these folks who have like subscribed to this particular, you know, fantasy that they are going to somehow be protected if they just stay in alignment with this white supremacist system. And until we start talking about that, then from economic justice to reproductive justice to, you know, working to go against this criminal injustice system that we're with, then we're going to keep being in these circular conversations. So I just wanted to raise that because this personification of this Kathy that showed up in your live shows up across all of our work all the time, and we have to start talking about things connected to each other.
Yeah, and if it's okay, I mean, there's so much to talk about. You guys have laid so much out, so but I'm only going to focus on the last part. So I take a slightly different tact on where I see, in particularly white women, when it had vis-a-vis white supremacy. I think they're not only complicit, they are part of it. They're not just happens. Yeah. They are. There may be few folks who are able to break away, just like we talk about people who commit class suicide. And yes, you want allies, but you know, in my opinion, in my reading of history, there's no white women, for whatever disadvantages they may have in terms of the capitalist model and the white supremacy model, they are tied to white supremacy.
Right there.
Yeah,
right.
They are not. Yeah, So I don't. You know, if someone breaks away, then that's great. But for me, Kathy is doing what I would expect Kathy to do. And if Kathy did otherwise, then that's fine. But Kathy does what I expect Kathy to do. Just like when we see the polls of the folks who voted for the overt white supremacist Donald Trump, right? It wasn't just majority of white people, there was also majority of white women, because they are tied and dedicated to the issue and the survival of white supremacy because of all they benefit from.
Absolutely.
So yes, I just, and I want to go back to a legal issue quickly, because I think it's an important conversation to have around qualified immunity. And this is somebody who is a practitioner as an attorney and did civil rights cases. And so I'm not necessarily, I know there's a lot of demands. I think we have to be careful, let's say, around the qualified immunity, stripping it away. What we need to make sure, even if it's stripped away, that the state, however, is still the state, the city, the police departments are still equally responsible for the conduct of the police officer as they operate under the color of law. Because what happens is, one way in which, whether we like it or not, our communities, our folks, people who are victims, seek justice is through lawsuits, right? Through the court system. And if the police are stripped of qualified immunity and there's no way to sue the state, i.e., as in you sue that individual could be judgment proof. What that means is basically they don't have enough money to settle a lawsuit, so you don't really get those resources anyway. So we have to just be careful around how we call for a shift around qualified immunity, something that doesn't take the burden off of the state and the city and the police department, and in some cases the union, for the training, the dictates, the apparatus, the weaponry, and everything else that's in that officer's hand, because they are doing it under the guise of the law. And we need folks who are, we need entities, right? Again, as this system works, who can be held accountable for that. So I just want to briefly put that in there. Is that something that I know it's a large call, but I think that we also have to be careful about how we slice that call. And then lastly, I'll say, I want to add to what I feel like is the right call for abolition and defunding is the demilitarization and the decentralization of the police. Because for me, if there's going to be a security apparatus in our community, even if it's smaller, even if it's called something else, but if it still has the power to arrest our people, to jail our people, then we must have control over any apparatus in the Black community that has the power to arrest, jail, kill our people. And we must be able to hire, fire, discipline those folks, because those folks in our community cannot be controlled by a militarized force that's outside of our control, right? Right now, those police are beholden to the police commissioner. They are beholden to their union. They're beholden to the mayorship. In some places, they're beholden to the governor or county officials. But what they're not beholden to is the people that they actually patrol, arrest, and control in our communities. And so we call for community boards that have the power to hire, fire, discipline police officers in our community. And so they basically control the local precincts, right? And so that way, these police are decentralized. There's no commissioner that it's over, that these boards can have other boards which link up in some sort of larger fashion to have a larger say in how safety and policing happens. But until we demilitarize and decentralize the police, they still will have the power in our communities to make decisions which are not for our good. And anytime somebody has the power to kill you, to control you, to arrest you, either you need to control that institution or you need to destroy that institution.
Yeah, and with our money too, I want to co-sign on what both of y'all said, because I have witnessed this at the local level, and it has been a trip. They say all politics is local, and what I saw was a lot of our newer residents, per what Kamal was saying earlier, with the city having an influx of new residents, predominantly lighter hue couples, Caucasian, etc., and they have taken over the neighborhood associations with this fear, bringing in security alliances, using funding from the city. And when they took that over, then they brought their husbands in to cast these votes to control these neighborhood associations with monetary dues, which then trickled up with an agenda to City Hall. And really, that's how we got more police over here. More police who didn't know the communities, more police who didn't live in the communities. All of that arose out of, and it's exactly the relationship that you're discussing and pointing out with the complicity. And no one wanted to think of themselves that way. The way that they formed this MO was by placing a person of color in front of this agenda. And it's a question that's coming up in Atlanta. Who's really in charge of Atlanta? Who owns Atlanta? And this conversation isn't going to end here. We're 5-6 minutes to the hour. I'm sure you both will be back, but you both have 2 upcoming events. If you, SisterSong and Community Movement Builders, could you please share those events, and we'll put up these links so that people can come out and be part of them, especially on this Juneteenth weekend.
Sure, I can go first if that's cool. Come out. So this weekend, today, actually, in the historic West End at the offices of SisterSong and Sister Love, which is affectionately called the Mother House in the West End. It's 1237 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard. We are having an event. Events going on today. The first event is honoring stolen Black motherhood, and we are honoring the mothers who have lost their children to state-sanctioned violence in the state of Georgia. So we're really, really honored and really excited to be able to bring these mothers together, but to also give honor to the lives of these children and to the lives of these women who are living without their children. So our Birth Justice team at SisterSong has put that beautiful event together. That will be starting at 4:30 p.m. At 6:30 p.m., we will be having our Soul Revival in honor of Juneteenth and the summer solstice. So we have live performances from African dance troupes. We have a DJ and live music. It's going to be really great. We are also going to be doing free COVID testing on site at the Mother House. So please come get your tests. And we are wearing masks. We are definitely socially distancing. So we want to make sure that folks are as safe as possible, but also have access to free COVID testing and an opportunity to be in celebration for the weekend. So we will also be providing masks and making sure that we keep ourselves as safe as possible. So that's again today starting at 4:30 p.m. at the Mother House on Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard. So I hope you all can make it and come support the event.
And we'll put up the links too. If you're sharing this stuff, folks, please make sure it's public. It's public links so that other people can see it who are not your friends. Yes. Matt, you've got an event, right?
Yes, we have an event at 3. That's perfect timing. Ours to be over, and we'll head over to SisterSong. Our event is at 3 o'clock in Pittman Park, and it's a social distancing barbecue. So we're going to be providing food and literature about COVID-19, about public safety, but free food, you know how we do in the barbecue. So folks going to be getting it in. It's 950 Garibaldi Street Southwest. It's happening at 3 o'clock. Come by. There will be signs, places for folks to drive by, get the cars. Again, we also will have masks, making sure everybody is safe, and hoping that everybody has a good time, and we can distribute information to continue to talk about the issues that are concerned to our community.
Thank you both. I'm going to put up the links. I've been on the phone for doing that, and definitely, Evette, I'll put up your story. In fact, Evette, maybe we need to start a petition for you. And David, I know you've been sitting there patiently. Would love to hear your thoughts on the final words. David, it's all you.
Well, I think I'll just maybe sketch out a little bit of what I might talk about in a later time. I just read a very interesting article about the New York City Police Department and the union that represents the police. These guys make on an average in their lives, they can retire after 22 years on the force at a maximum 50% pay. They get full health benefits, and the pension allows them to make in the course of a lifetime something on the order of $3.5 to $4 million. That's about what you would get if you had a PhD or some kind of higher degree. And the qualifications are for a high school degree. There are 36,000 police officers in New York, active duty police officers, and 55,000 retirees. So when you start adding up what the costs are of these officers and retirees, it's in the billions of dollars every year. Okay, and I really think that that what Kamau is saying and the rest of you about defunding the police is really critically important, that we understand what kind of, now, I mean, Atlanta cops probably make much less than that.
They're about 45K starting.
What's that?
They're about 45K starting.
Well, then they're not that far off, because that's what New York City police officers start around 45K. Within 5 years, they're making 80 plus K, and that doesn't include overtime. Which ironically, all of these street demonstrations give the cops a lot of overtime, and I'm not saying we should stop demonstrating. I'm just saying that the guys who are closest to retirement, they want to maximize their income, in their last 3 to 4 years. So they pick up all the overtime that they can get. and that raises their pensions. So I would say the same is true here, probably in Atlanta. There are billions and billions of dollars being spent on this oppressive apparatus, which is there, I think, as Kamau is saying, primarily to protect real estate. That's what they're doing. They're and the other part of it is that the other critical part of it is that these police unions, these police benevolent associations, are part of the labor movement. Okay, many of them are in some of the biggest unions, the Service Employees International Union, and others like that have prison guard unions and police unions in their ranks, and we really there needs to be a discussion, a serious discussion within the labor movement about whether these people belong in there or not.
That's exactly, David, why we wanted to have Evette just on here today as a labor activist, with specifically representation. Absolutely. And discuss at the same time what's happening in the community. And we wanted to have organizations like Kamau's in Pittsburgh who are organizing and creating alliances along with organizations in West End, like SisterSong with Monica, how we can bring it all together, create a coalition. And I want to really thank Tamara, because Tamara, this is her platform. This is her her baby. And she's allowed us all to come on, say our point of view, all on her time. And this is what people do with platforms when they care about people. She doesn't have to do any of this. I mean, Tamara met me a year ago, and she has been so generous and allowed not only our friendship to build, but allowed coverage of Southwest Atlanta and the South Side. Nobody's covering us like this. The AJC is not doing it. Supporter Report's not doing it. It's hard for independent media to do. She's connected us with Egberto. Now Evette's story's out there. People are actually watching. And I will be at both the Community Movement Builders event in Pittsburgh going live. I'll be at the SisterSong event in West End going live. And we'll be here next week at 11 with Miss Tamara, and at the polls too. It's top of the hour. Thank
you. Robby, let me just make, you know what? This is our platform. This has never been something that we wanted to do alone or thought, this is our platform. This is a platform where we give voice to issues, to activists and activism right here in the great state of Georgia. And you guys are the heroes. I want to thank you, Monica, for all the great that you're doing. Thank you, Kamau, for standing just standing strong, brother. I just appreciate you so much. Evette, my prayers are always with you, because you are fighting a hard battle, and we are right here in the trenches with you. David, thank you. We ride. And Miss Robby, I love you, girl. I love you, and I appreciate you. And this is our platform, and this is how we do our great state of Georgia. So I thank you guys. We'll be back next week. I am Tamara Johnson-Shealy, candidate for the United States Senate. We'll see you guys next week, and I will see both of y'all this afternoon, because I will be there too.
Thank y'all.
Right.
Thank y'all.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.